In today's interview, I got to chat with Lacey Book, a truly extraordinary chiropractor. I'm Nimrod Weiner, and I'd love you to join me to hear how Lacey has not only realized that her premise of chiropractic has changed throughout her life, but how that has also affected how she practices, how she coaches, and how she views the world as well. There's some amazing information in here in Lacey's studies of chiropractic, of the green books, of the principles and paradigm of chiropractic, and how that's applied to her life and how she extends those lessons to the lives of those around her. Please join me and enjoy this interview with Lacey Book. Thank you very much for being with us today, Lacey Book. You're a phenomenal inspiration for chiropractic, for what you bring, what I've seen you bring in terms of really weaving the understanding of the philosophy into practice and into the art and communication as well. So maybe just as a way of introduction, if you can tap a little bit into your journey and what brought you to the point that you're at the moment.
Absolutely. I think my journey starts much like a lot of people out there. And I always say it's a little bit cliche, but it's absolute truth. I said that chiropractic found me. And I literally was working in a bank as a teller. And this woman came up to me one day. She used to always wait in my line. And she slid me her card and she said, "Lacey, I want you to work for me."
Wow.
And she was a chiropractor. And at that time, I was 16 years old. I knew nothing about chiropractic. I don't even think I came across the word chiropractic before. And I thought, okay. And she said something to me that I say forever changed my life. And she said, "Whatever you're getting paid here at the bank, I'll pay you more." And I was 16 years old, so it sounded like the best opportunity on the planet. Lo and behold, I ended up working for her. And over the course of 7 years after that, I ended up working for 5 different chiropractors and really getting into chiropractic at that time. And it was interesting for me because I was the office manager. One of the offices I was in was super high volume with 3 different doctors. They did all different techniques. And I sat there and I was falling in love with chiropractic, but I always had this question in the back of my mind. I always wondered why we talk about the body's innate ability to heal and the capacity it has to do all these things. And I always wondered, well, why do people come back for the same stuff over and over? Whether it was a week down the line, a month, a year, whatever that was, people always came back with these same issues. And I thought in the back of my mind, there had to be something more, but I love chiropractic because it absolutely touched people's lives and that spread out into their families, into the community. And so I knew I wanted to be part of it, and I ended up going to school. And I was sitting in class, first hour, first day, in philosophy. And at that time, I had been still suffering from some health conditions of my own that chiropractic always helped me keep at bay. I had thyroid problems, digestive issues. I was like your traditional insomniac that slept 4 hours a night and knew every infomercial that came on TV. And I sat there and this chiropractor stood up and he said, chiropractors travel all over the world and speak on these big stages, and they tell you their chiropractic miracle story. And he said, in my office, I expect nothing less than that, a miracle every single day. Yeah. And I thought, what is he talking about? That is what I've always wondered. That is what I've always been looking for. And then began my journey of really working to understand the capacity of which chiropractic had the ability to heal people. I just didn't understand its capacity to do so before that moment. I thought about it, but I didn't really understand it. And from that moment forward, I ended up starting my journey in upper cervical knee chest work and diving into the philosophy of chiropractic to really build a solid foundation of making sure that I understood the chiropractic principles and that I did right by the chiropractic principles. else.
Yeah.
And then here I am.
Yeah. So maybe in those first 7 years before you started studying, what was it about the chiropractic principles back then that got you fired up?
Yeah, it's interesting because I didn't know that there was even such a thing as chiropractic principles, or that there was a thing called the chiropractic philosophy. But you can't ignore it,
Mm.
when you're in a chiropractic office. I mean, it's there in front of you, no matter what technique somebody does, no matter the people that are coming in the office, the doctor behind the door, the chiropractic principles are always at play. And it was this unpalpable palpable thing. It was this immaterial existence of the ability to heal and the hope that was given in exchange for it.
Mm.
And I mean, I think that moved me so much. And seeing people come in that had tried every pill, potion, lotion on the planet and said, I need something different. And this idea that they really didn't need anything, but the expression of that was what was inside of them already. And
Mm.
you saw that as people got well and experienced healing. And it was
Yeah.
undeniable.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that hope that we give people is so powerful, isn't it?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
huge. How would you describe hope?
I think hope is a very interesting thing. I can tell you, um, people tell me that in my office all the time after they go through their initial exam and they hear about what it is that we do and what chiropractic's all about. They look at me and they'll say, you know what, Dr. Lacey, for the first time and as long as I can remember, I have hope again.
Mm.
And it's funny because I actually think that that's different for every individual. It's I think that hope can be better categorized for them as belief.
Yeah.
It's really a reigniting of the belief in their body that they can go back to their normal, to who they once were, and be able to do the things that they could do again. So I don't even know that I would call it hope because they say that word, but you can see it in them. They're beginning to believe again.
Mm.
And I think that's where they really are. And again, that's different for everyone. The end result is different, whether it's singing in the church choir or picking up their grandkids or, playing golf again or being able to run or whatever. It's just belief that they can get to that moment in time that brings them so much joy again.
Mm.
And
Yeah, yeah. I watched Brené Brown give a little bit of a lecture in which she touched on this, and she said that for her, hope was being able to see the end goal and having a plan to get from here to there. It's
yes.
the ability to believe in that being able to cross the bridge.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mm.
that's exactly
Yeah,
what it is. They're
yeah,
they're almost one and the same. And
yeah.
until you asked me that, I don't know that I've ever even really thought about it on that level, but that's the absolute truth.
Yeah, and so you've brought up a couple of times healing and people's capacity to heal. What would you say is the capacity to heal? How would you put that into words?
Um, and it's interesting because I will tread lightly around the word healing. I think, when you start diving into the chiropractic philosophy and really truly beginning to understand the chiropractic principles, it's not even this idea of healing. It's actually just a journey back to normal. Even the idea of when we talk about miracles, there's no miracles in chiropractic. I
Yeah.
mean, let's just say that. Let's just bring it out right now because
Yeah.
the reality is when you adjust somebody and they get their hearing back or the colicky baby, stops crying or somebody gets feeling back in their foot or they're sleeping again, that is not a miracle. It's just the body's ability to go back into its normal state
Mm.
because that's what normal is. So I would say that it's not a capacity to heal. It's actually an ability to return to normal is
Mhm.
probably a better way to describe it.
Okay, yeah, and so you've touched on a couple of things that you said about your belief and your view of the world. So going
Hmm.
deeper on that, what would you say is one of your metaphysical premises or axioms? What's a strong belief for you?
Really interesting. I mean, I think that a lot of people can resonate with this idea, but it's just that mindset and thoughts, the power of thoughts are beyond anything that we can comprehend. They're an immaterial concept, but produce a material thing, whether that is abundance in one way of your life or another. Abundance with money, abundance with happiness, creating strong relationships, abundance of patience in your office, or even your mindset around how you're going to heal or return to normal. Like the power of thoughts is a very true, real concept. And my premise is always working on my own mindset to make sure that I can achieve the things that I want to achieve, because action is very important. But if the mindset is incorrect behind the action is very weak.
Yeah.
And so understanding how powerful those are, I think, is something that, in my view of the world, you can see where things fall apart because of the thought process of the individual that's behind it.
Okay. So would it be something like bringing about our reality as a result of the thinking and thought process and worldview that we have?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why does that excite and invigorate you?
What is it that excites and invigorates me?
Yeah, about that.
Oh, why does that?
Yeah.
Oh, because it's completely dependent upon the individual. It doesn't matter what external or internal environment you're in. It doesn't matter who you're around, truly. I mean, they say, oh, the 5 people that you're around truly influence you, but they only influence you because you allow it.
Yeah.
So I love it. It excites me because really it's the one thing in my life I have 100% control over. The way that I think, the thoughts that I choose to have, the way that I think them, and the way that they're said in my head, and then the way that I project them out into the reality. It's this one thing that it's all yours, and you can do whatever you want with it. And I love that because there's so many things in our world, especially right now, that are completely out of our control. But that is one thing that is not. And that gets me very excited.
Yeah, amazing. And it brings to mind Viktor Frankl. I'm not sure if you've read him. His book, Man's Search for Meaning. He was a Holocaust survivor and a psychologist. And he noted that people who basically survived were the ones who had hope and held on to a very strong thought through the Holocaust, changing their response to what was happening to them. So, in such an extreme way, it's a great example of what you're talking about.
And in a smaller way, we can see that in the people that we serve and the patients that we take care of, right? Their ability to really attach to that hope that we were talking about before, and that belief in what their body can do is going to make a big difference on if they're going to come out of it or not, right? Even though we allow the expression of that innate intelligence within them, there still needs to be some belief behind it in order for it to occur, right?
Yeah. So this brings up a really interesting topic. The adjustment for us can be such a mechanical thing on one level, knowing how to apply what we do to C1 in the right way at the right time. But what about the hope? How do you feed that into the adjustment of the person?
Well, I mean, I think that the adjustment itself, understanding, again, I'm big on that. I'm big on understanding the right time, right place with the right amount of force, because in all of my studies that I do in the chiropractic philosophy, when you really begin to understand this external force that we put into the body and what it can do, it can be used for good or bad. That plays into a lot of how that person's going to have the ability to heal, right? But there is also a component of us making sure that we are verbalizing that ability and continually, almost like cheerleading for them. I mean, I'm sure in your office, you've been a cheerleader a million times for people that are extremely sick. There's this realization for us that even when innate is expressing, there's still the component of time as the body has to regress and rework through a lot of those issues to recalibrate and get restoration to occur to actually get to normal. So there has to be a mindset approach that's built within those walls. It's not chiropractic. I mean, let's be clear. Mindset is not a chiropractic principle or in the chiropractic philosophy, the things like the adjustment, innate intelligence, and those things are, but there is a mind-body connection that we're fully aware of and cannot ignore. And so that's I believe, still a big part of it. Because how many people give up too soon? How many people, just constantly tell themselves that they're going to be sick forever? How many people have an identity wrapped up in that, and there's no way, it doesn't matter what you do, sometimes they can't get out of it because it still lives here, even though it's not living here anymore. Right?
Yeah.
So it is a big part of it.
It is, yeah. And, that addiction to how we're being is such a strong thing. But maybe going back to the mindset, is there a way that you help people prepare their mind to receive the adjustment in the best way possible?
I would say the way that I do things in my office and the way that I coach my clients is really, it's just being very transparent and a setting up of expectations. I think that people, no matter what profession you're in, no matter what interaction, even if it's just a personal relationship, people have expectations. We're human. We set up expectations in our minds before anything, any moment, any conversation or any action occurs. So for me, really setting their mindset is a setting of expectations. So I like to lay out, before I give the first adjustment to that individual, all the things that can happen, not only after that moment, but in all of the moments that they're going to be under care in the office. The good times, the bad times. There's going to be times where you feel worse than you did, or old injuries are going to show up again. And I want them to know that I expect that, and that it's part of the process, versus getting to that point and then all of a sudden they're like, I have the worst headache I ever have. And you go, oh no, that's exactly what's supposed to happen, because then they don't believe you. They think that you made it up. But if you can set up expectations and be very clear and confident in the very beginning, you can help frame their mindset of what that's going to look like and better prepare them to be convicted and committed and stay within that hope. And that's, I think, super important piece that I see a lot of people miss the mark on and forget to say things until later, and sometimes until it's too late.
Yeah. And have you ritualized the helping the people create their reality out of their thoughts by some words that you use with people pre or post adjustment, or anything in your office that's specifically set up to help people train their mind to expect, the capacity of healing?
I wouldn't say that I work directly on that, but I would imagine that in the way I communicate what it is I do and what's happening on a day-to-day basis, that's probably just embedded within that way of communication. I mean, in our offices, we use what's called computerized infrared thermography, which is a device that we utilize to find out the when component of when the adjustment's necessary. And it actually looks at the neurology of that individual and allows me to see when it's not firing and functioning and there's actual interference present, or when they're coming in and their body is adapting and in a clear state where things are working the way that they should. So if I give somebody an adjustment and rest them and they come back and their nervous system is clear and working properly, oh boy, do I let them know. And when they come in and they don't need an adjustment, we actually celebrate. And I tell them those are days of celebration. We do the happy dance, we high five, we get excited. And for them, they know in that moment, no matter how they're feeling, that their body is doing its job and it's on the road to healing. So I think that piece of it really helps them to begin to get on board and understand that it's a process, but they're going down the right direction. So I think that's probably a big part of it.
Yeah, great, excellent. It's so important to be able to tap people into those emotions and understanding of what their body's doing. What about for you? So if our thinking creates our reality, are there any rituals you go through beyond your certainty, clarity, and confidence in the adjustment itself to prepare your mind to be a flow for innate to work its magic?
Specifically in the chiropractic world, yeah. So a couple things that I do. Number one, I'm a big proponent for when I start my day, actually warming up.
Mm.
One of the things I noticed in the offices that I worked in, my chiropractors, I would always be the first one there.
Yeah.
And the chiropractor would be flying in, a little bit right before their first patient. And then that patient would get on the table. And so the warm up begins, right? And come on, we've all, been there one way, or we know we've all done it. But for me, I think it's really, really important to set the space for me to get ready to take care of those people. Because the reality of it is they've literally put their life into my hands and trusted me to guide them on what's going on in their bodies and their health. So whenever I go to the office, we actually have what's called a speeder board, which it's an adjustment simulator. So it allows me to get into how I do the adjustment and run a bunch of simulations on it, warm up all my muscles that I would be using in the adjustment itself. And that just helps, again, to neurologically say, hey, body, we're getting ready to do this.
Yep.
And of course, set the mindset to know that there's people coming in for that, and trusting me to take care of them. That's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure so much of it is anchored in that for you as well, in that ritual.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you talked about originally when you first started being exposed to chiropractic, what excited you most was the potential for healing to occur. Is there something different that excites you now that you've done so much reading and studying other principles and philosophy? What would invigorate you most now about what we do through chiropractic?
This is interesting. I think that for me, it has shifted a lot. It's really, as I study, the more I study the principles and the philosophy, and actually the more people that I take care of, it's this idea of the fact that the universal intelligence, innate intelligence, the principles of chiropractic, they're so much bigger than we could ever begin to understand and comprehend. Like there's so much more out there than just little me. Like it's really, as I dive in and begin to understand more, I would say that it's made my world a lot bigger than it ever was. Just knowing, knowing that you could have a bad day, because we are human, even though we're chiropractors, we're human. We could have a bad day and give somebody a bad adjustment, but that innate intelligence within them can use it for something good and help them heal and get restoration in their bodies, even though I'm off. Like just this understanding that all of that within them is far bigger than what I could ever give them. No matter how good I am, no matter if I'm a master or not at my technique or the philosophy or the understanding of the principles, it's really so much bigger, so much grander, so much more complex and beautiful than we could ever begin to understand. And it keeps me in a state of reverence and awe every day that I'm awake and breathing and thinking and living chiropractic.
Yeah.
So I think that's it for me. Yeah.
Amazing. And I think it's so beautiful to be able to understand that to some degree. What is, if you can unpack that a little bit for us, so how do you see that happening in a person under your care? What exactly is happening if you give a good adjustment or a bad adjustment, if it's still an effective adjustment to some degree? How is their innate using that potential?
So this is really, there's a concept, if I can go into the philosophy a little bit, if you don't mind. There's a concept in the chiropractic philosophy in the books that B.J. Palmer talks about a lot, and it's this idea of concussion of forces. And what B.J. says about that is that an external invasionary force comes into the system, and that this internal resistive force that's provided by innate intelligence resists that force. If innate can resist it, it's not too big or it doesn't overcome, it will actually take it and use it for the greater good of the body. Because innate intelligence only job is to adapt for that and coordinate that individual system to make sure that things are functioning and firing the way and working the way that they should, everything in coordination. So if that external force comes in and innate says, I got this, it can use it for whatever it needs to,
Hmm.
because innate is all knowing and it knows what that body needs. And it doesn't matter if that force was exactly in the right place, right time, right amount of force. Sometimes innate still, that's what I said, it's bigger than me, can take it and use it to get that person to begin to restore and on the road to healing and normalization. Um, that's where it comes into play, though, that sometimes we provide a force as chiropractors that's, external and is too great for innate to resist, and it can actually be used for something bad in the body. So it's this idea, this concussion of forces idea is something that as chiropractors, we work with every single day. We know that this external force can be a trauma or a hit to the head or a car accident, but sometimes it can be us. But also on that same effect, innate can use a car accident or a fall for something beneficial in the body. How many times have you heard a story where somebody's like, I got into a car accident and my back got better?
Yeah.
Or a little girl that falls out of a tree and her disease that nobody could name, there's a movie out there about it, miraculously got cured
Mm.
because innate is so big and amazing. It can utilize that for something beautiful to restore that human being. I mean,
Mm.
and again, for us, we could never guess what that is. Is
Mm.
it going to be digestion or getting rid of cancer cells or allowing them to sleep better? It's innate's job to put that information in there, drive it down that impulse, and allow that body to heal whatever it's necessary at that moment in time.
Yeah.
Does that
Yeah.
answer the question?
Absolutely, yeah, it really
Okay.
does. Yeah. In terms of that, you touched a little bit about the things that can throw a system, the body off from working at its best. And you talk about, when forces come in and they're too big for innate to be able to handle, right?
hmm
What about in with people that you coach in practices themselves? What throws systems off there?
Ooh, I would say the number one issue that I see that throws systems off in a coaching client, because we talk about so much of his mindset, is exactly that.
Mm.
Is just their mindset around certain things. Majority of people actually have a really negative, I would say, difficult time navigating the money mindset.
Mhm.
And so Sean and I are really big on working on this component of changing your mindset around money. One of the reasons why, too, is I actually had a really, really hard time myself when I first got started kind of navigating this money idea. I started working since the day I turned 14 and never stopped. And I always lived paycheck to paycheck. And so the idea that you can make as much money as you wanted with the service that you provide was not in my paradigm. And I don't think it's in a lot of people's paradigm.
Yeah.
And so I see that being kind of their subluxation per se in their own practices.
Yep. And how do you go about adjusting that?
One of my tricks that I love that actually a lot of people have told me have worked well for them. For me, I had a hard time with just the idea of abundance, just
Hmm.
abundance in general. I think especially going through school, we're not taught to have a lack mentality, but we don't charge high prices for the patients that come into our clinics. We're pretty much giving that service away as we're paying the school to be there.
Yeah.
So we don't know how to collect money or charge the appropriate fee for the service that we provide. And up until that point, we're accruing a ton of debt, and then we come out of school with all this debt. So abundance doesn't quite fit
Yeah.
in the mind at that moment. And for me, I fell into that trap. So I really began to realize that I had to change my neurology around the idea of abundance. So I did a couple of things. I read this book that changed my life. It was called The Little Money Bible by Stuart Wilde. It will blow your mind.
Yeah.
And it talks about the amount of wealth that's on the planet, and how if that wealth was distributed evenly to everybody, how everybody could be extremely rich.
Mm.
And that money is literally out there in the world. It's almost like energy. It flows. It flows to you, it flows away from you, but it can always come back. And just that idea of that you didn't have to hoard it, that you could utilize it for things and it would come back to you oftentimes in greater abundance shifted my mindset. So I thought, I've got to have an abundance mindset all the time. So what I do with my clients and what I've done with, because I did it to myself, is I wanted to disrupt my mental thought process.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do this for anything. If you have a negative thought about how you look or how you feel or how you communicate or your relationships with other people, your relationship with money, amount of patients that are going to come into your office, you can do this same thing. And I call it the alarm clock method. Essentially what it is I would set my alarm clock to go off multiple times throughout the day, and it would just have the word abundance on it. And my phone would beep and I would look down and it would literally disrupt whatever negative thought process I had in that moment about with that lack mentality. And I would start thinking about abundance. And you set that alarm clock however often you need. If it needs to be every hour, if it needs to be every half hour, or every 3 hours, it's whatever you need to disrupt that neurological embedded thought that you have within you. So that really helped me start thinking about abundance of money, abundance of patience, abundance of happiness. It's in everything.
Yeah.
And then I would write that stuff on my walls. I would put the word abundance on my walls, in my journals. So literally it just engulfed and surrounded me until that mindset could change. And when doing that with clients, it's amazing to see how things begin to shift for them. It just literally opens up that flow, that universal flow, and the ability for the universe to provide you all the things that you're worthy of, right?
Yeah, beautiful. And I think, it's using those words like flow and energy and the static, caught up nature that it can have as a result of our mindset, it really parallels a lot of how we view the subluxation and the flow through the body, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So we know that when people come into us and they're subluxated, we look for a specific list of things that could be markers or symptoms and signs of that subluxation. What about for people in their practice? Are there things that you think are glaringly obvious that they're subluxated in their mindset or stopping them from being at their potential?
Yeah, I really love stats. So I love looking at the statistics of an office. And I always say, listen, your stats are your ability to analyze the health of your office. Mm-hmm. The same way we're looking at stats and looking at things, like you said, in an individual or in a patient to see whether or not they have a subluxation, you need to be able to have markers to look at in your office to see if you have a subluxation. And those are literally your numbers. If you begin to understand what your chiropractic numbers mean, your CVA, your case visit average, your patient visit average, your new patients, your conversion rate, all of those things, if you can begin to understand what they mean and how you achieve them, you can begin to look at them and see the areas that you're weak in, and then begin to see where areas need improvement. And so for me, I'm always looking at the statistics of what's going on in an office to figure out where is that mental hang-up occurring, right? A lot of times, too, what we see, especially early on in practice, is the ability to keep people long-term, right? That avoiding that leaky bucket syndrome where patients are coming in, they're just there for 6 to 8 visits and they're gone. I mean, if you look at your stats, you should have exponential growth, right? And averages that people are staying for a long time and paying you a certain amount of money. And so we can begin to see, like, where are your systems and infrastructure? What's happening in there that's causing that to fall apart?
Yeah.
So that gives us great insight. If you don't keep stats in your office, I highly recommend that you start doing that, because you'll have some huge insight on where you need to beef up the things that you're doing or make some changes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you brought up such an important point. It always astounds me how many chiropractic coaching and technique sort of things there are out there about bringing in new people. But if we just kind of address the fact that people are leaving us too soon, then we really wouldn't need that many new people. As you said, we would have exponential growth.
Yes.
It's an interesting mentality that we have.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was going to say, if you look at chiropractic as a business, the profession as a business, historically, we've only taken care of about I mean, if we want to be conservative, maybe 6 to 8% of the population. And over time, that market share has actually decreased.
Yeah.
But like you said, we've got tons of things out there telling us how to get new people in.
Yeah.
So in a strong business, if we were bringing in all these new people, our market share should actually increase. But over time, it's gone down,
Yeah.
which means our retention is horrible
Yeah.
as a profession. And that's where we actually need to focus, is keeping the people with us that actually come in as a new patient. Yeah, you make a great point.
Yeah, and do you think that comes back to the individual's mindset and their thought creating their reality?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it what comes to a lot of things, absolutely the individual. Anytime anything's going on in a grand scheme, right? Like as the profession as a whole, we need to look at ourselves as an individual, and then we need to look at, everybody as a whole as well. And I think, yes, the individual needs to work on their mindset, but we also need to teach more retention strategies in these coaching, practice management, and hopefully one day in our schools, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But teach those strategies to keep people with us. So I think it can be the responsibility of all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just to finish off a couple of questions with you, Lacey. What do you think is the biggest gift that chiropractic itself has to humanity, to the world, to the universe?
I think that it is just allowing expression of life. When we have nervous system interference, it decreases the body's ability to express. And when that occurs and innate cannot adapt, that manifests outwardly as a decreased expression of life, which sometimes means a broken relationship or a neglected child or shootings in Las Vegas or whatever that could be. It can mean so many things, but oftentimes it's typically for not only the detriment of the individual, but the detriment of humanity. And so allowing that expression of life through adaptation, innate intelligence, and universal intelligence, I think, again, that we can increase humanity's ability to love one another and care for one another and, treat each other as individuals and maybe get rid of some of the things that are going on in the world if everybody was fully expressed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Really reaching out to that big message of compassion and our ability to love and connect with others. And you mentioned life, our expression in life. What for you is one of the most astounding, inspiring aspects of life?
Again, much like the mental mindset, I think one of the greatest things about life is that there's no limits. You create your life, this life, to be whatever you want it to be. The only limit really is yourself. And, life can be full of love and, like you said, compassion and travel and abundance and happiness. And it can be that for everybody. It's just a matter of who wants to take it on, right?
Yeah.
And I think that for me is the most beautiful thing, is that there really is no limit to the way that we can live and how we live our lives.
Yeah, great. Which brings me perfectly to the last question, which is, for you, what are you creating? What's the legacy that you're deliberately, proactively working on?
So this is always an interesting thing for me because much like when I went into chiropractic school, I thought chiropractic was one thing, and then I had a realization that it was so much bigger than what I can ever begin to understand. And I also, when I graduated, thought that chiropractic and my legacy in chiropractic was going to be one thing. And now I'm beginning to understand it's much bigger than I can understand. My husband and I own the Specific Chiropractic Centers. It's a franchise here in the United States and currently have 18 offices with 30 doctors in our system. And there was a time where I thought, I just want to change this community that I'm living in by touching the lives of the individuals that live in it. And what I'm beginning to understand is that, much like BJ said, you never know how far reaching. Well, my reach is much greater than the people that are just in my community. My ability to coach other chiropractors, to have all of these offices, help the doctors in our system become more successful, allows my reach to touch them so that they can reach more people. So it's just far beyond what I ever thought it could be. And then even deeper, one level deeper to that, this idea of this work that I do, this knee, chest, upper cervical work that, BJ talks about in volume 18 of the Green Books, really keeping that technique alive. We teach the art of the specific, which is that technique, marrying the philosophy, science, art, and business of chiropractic, and staying true and pure to the principles through that work, and making sure that more people have the ability to have exposure to it and understanding whether they want to do full spine or not. Being more proficient in that upper cervical area just helps people really get a whole nother level of resolution and restoration, unlike anything I've seen before. So just keeping those things going, touching people and communities that I don't even live in, and having that spread throughout the world, becoming an international franchise. And then, of course, taking the technique and just touching more chiropractors with the ability to understand it and learn it.
Yeah, great. So you've touched on a number of different things that you're involved in and ways that chiropractors could be helped by you. What's the best way if chiropractors want to reach you? How should they do that?
You can find me. The best way is find me on Facebook. I'm under Lacey Book. Everybody likes to communicate that way. It's such an easy way for us to stay in touch. You can also find me on laceybook.com. I have a website there. We're under construction. We're just about to release some new stuff. And then, of course, theartofthespecific.com if you are ever interested in the technique. We do come out to Australia. In fact, we're in Melbourne on, November 24th, 25th, and 26th, coming out there to teach as well. So definitely would love to connect.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think it's very worthwhile for chiropractors to touch again through, as you said, the philosophy, the art, the science, the business, perfecting their technique in doing that. So just in closing, what is one thing you would love to say to every chiropractor, or maybe ask of every chiropractor if you could reach them all around the world?
Everywhere I go, I end with the same message. And I think if you think back over your chiropractic journey, you can think about all the people maybe that have touched your lives, the mentors that you've had, the people you've listened to on stage. And more often than not, you'll find that they all have one thing in common, and that's an understanding of the chiropractic philosophy and its principles. And in order for us to create this chiropractic profession, to reach more people, increase our market share, keep people around, we've got to have clarity on what our philosophy is about and the principles that drive it. And we as individual chiropractors need to be able to not only have a foundation in that, but have the ability to communicate it, have the ability to have the philosophy drive our technique decisions, have the philosophy drive our business decisions, our communication, our understanding of the science. And in order to do that, you've got to start to study that philosophy. So I always say, if you're interested in doing that and you want that in your life, in your world, so you can help people really achieve a whole nother level of life, then start by reading Stevenson's chiropractic textbook. It's volume 14 in the Green Books. And it literally is a book to educate the student. It takes you through the freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior texts, all about our philosophy and its principles, and really helps you gain an understanding and, more importantly, an appreciation of what that's all about. So I would just urge everybody, pick up that book and don't just read it, study it, and I promise it will not only change your life, but all the lives of the people that you will have the ability to touch.
Yeah, amazing. And I think through this conversation, it's very obvious that your life, your journey through chiropractic has been touched at very specific points by our philosophy and expanded your awareness of the world and the universe and your mindset, and how that thinking has brought about a different reality for you. So you've really shown a way that can be just such a beautiful path to follow. So thank you very much for your time, Lacey. It's great chatting with you, and I think there's so much inspiring wisdom in through there for chiropractors to expand their knowledge and understanding of their world. So once again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great.